with Ralph and Lonnie Giamicas of Wine Country at Work. And we're getting ready to visit Brian and Crystal Waugh at the caves in Soda Canyon.
I think it's going to be just a really interesting interview. This is a spectacular location, and the views are just amazing.
To say nothing of a great story.
Yes. Good. Crystal, you're from Texas originally, yes?
Yes, I am.
How did you get here?
Well, I came on vacation 10 years ago with 10 girls from Dallas and checked into the Villaggio Hotel in Yountville, and there was a featured winemaker named Ryan Waugh, who is now my husband.
Oh my gosh.
So 10 years later, here I am. I'm in the wine business, 2 kids and a winery, 2 wine labels.
That's a very romantic story.
It's very romantic, yeah. We dated long distance for a year. We saw each other every weekend, typically 4 to 5 days out of every week. And he said, are you going to be the president of Neiman Marcus, or should you move out to Napa and we'll continue on with this wine business? And it was a no-brainer. So, of course, I said, I'm moving to Napa, and here I am. Fantastic decision.
Working at Neiman Marcus and working in a winery has got to be,
You know, it's interesting. The similarities are it's all about customer service, and it's all about the customer experience. It's all about a high-end quality product and how you want to portray that product. And so those things are similar, but obviously we're selling very, very different things. And so I was able to actually translate a lot of my experience from my corporate life into the winery life. Now I've learned a lot about it, being married to a winemaker, and being the official wine taster for Waugh Cellars is my title. I'm the director of wine. I'm the director of quality control is what my husband says. So I've learned a lot through being around him and tasting. And but I started off just as a consumer like everybody else.
Wonderful. How did you get into making wine? What drew you into that field?
One bottle of wine that I had my freshman year in college. It was given to me by my girlfriend at the time at Santa Clara. Her dad wanted to open up a bottle of wine from the year I was born. And so we picked out a bottle in his cellar, and it was a 1976 Stag's Leap Wine Cellars Cab, yes. Lot 2, which is the Fay Vineyard at Stag's Leap. And I remember him opening it. They lived down in Carmel, Pebble Beach, and I was awkwardly swirling the wine, and I'm looking at Ted, and I smelled it and tasted it, and it was the most wonderful thing I'd ever smelled and tasted in my life. I mean, and you know, your sense of smell is just so powerful, especially as it's tied to memory. And so when I talk about it, like I feel like I can smell it.
Oh yes,
you know,
never forget.
So good. I went to the library and I found some books on wine and started reading about them, and I said, you know, I'd love to get a job. And so I called all the wineries around the Santa Cruz Mountains, and one of them, Michael McNeil, who's now the winemaker at Hansel, amazing man, he's kind of my mentor. He said, come on up, and he put me out in the vineyard, and I really enjoyed it. And so I was going to school, and I was working at this winery, and I was with him for 2 years, and then he said, why don't you go up to UC Davis and go to one of the career fairs that kind of open your mind. And so I drove out there, and I met Marquetta from Schopeg, and she was looking for a part-time cellar master, work with the barrels. And so I took my junior and senior year at Santa Clara. I was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday working at Schopeg, so I would get up at 5 a.m. down at Santa Clara, and I'd drive up to the top of Howell Mountain, or top of Mount Beater, and I would go do all the work they needed in the barrels and bottling and whatever. I was managing all their barrels, and then I graduated and moved up here, and then I went to Trefethen, and I was working in a couple different tasting rooms and working with some grape growers, and I was working 7 days a week in all aspects of the business. And I'll never forget, before I moved, I told my parents that I was not going to go to medical school, because I'd taken the MCAT and did all that, and at graduation I told them I wasn't going, and that didn't go over so well. And they love it now. My mom justifies it by saying I'm in internal medicine.
Right.
So that's good.
Well, you certainly have a much nicer lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, now, family is really important to us. Our boys are incredibly important to us. We can incorporate all of that in this industry, and it's.
You're out in the fresh air.
It's
you're
amazing.
In the country. You're in one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
Yeah.
And you're not dealing with sick people all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
People you run into all the time are mostly in a good mood.
Yeah. And
nice.
if not, we're going to try to put them in a good mood.
Exactly. If not, when they arrive after the first tasting.
Yeah.
So, but it was a good choice. I think it was a good choice.
Yeah, I do too.
People oftentimes underestimate how important the winery experience is for the people visiting.
Right.
Because in truth, most people's palates are not that good.
Everybody thinks they've got a good palate. I guess you like what you like.
Well, that's the important thing. They know
Right.
what they like, but in
Right.
terms of, you put them down at a side-by-side tasting of 8 Cabernets, it's not that easy to tell the top-ranked Cabernets apart.
Not necessarily. That's true.
No.
Not
But they
necessarily.
will tell you the difference between, well, I went to this cave, or we were out in the vineyards, or we were in a tasting room downtown. That experience they understand.
Yeah, I think our motto of the cave here is, they're not going to remember what you say, they're going to remember how you made them feel.
Ah.
And so when we invite people to come and join us for a tasting and a tour, we like for them to feel like they're a part of this, that they're connected to the winery, that they're connected to the family. Since we've got 4 winery families here, we're pouring 4 different labels. We like for people to feel like they're sitting with each of the winemakers or with a member of each of the families, and that they it's personal for them, and they feel a connection.
Right, and that's the biggest complaint people will make, is that the winery was impersonal.
I've heard that a lot. I've heard that a lot from folks that have visited other places that just feel like it was more of a, and they love to be educated, but that it was more of a, let me tell you what you're tasting, versus me asking them, what are you tasting? What do you like about this? What do you not like about this? And we let them decide what they're enjoying, and we don't tell them what they're enjoying. Everybody's got a different palate. So we just like to lay out a bunch of different wines, whites, reds from all the families, and let them decide for themselves.
So when you first came up to this property, what did you first think? I mean, was there even a road?
No road, no well, no permits. It was just a raw 41-acre piece of property with a great view on either side.
Right, made mostly out of rock.
Yeah, all rock. The grades were 30% to 70%. So you sort of, vineyards were out of the equation.
Right.
You can't do that right. But I remember standing up on top and looking out at the Soda Canyon side to the east and the Napa Valley side to the west. And my only thought was, how do you possibly take advantage of both sides without totally destroying the beauty of the site? And there's only one answer. You got to go underground. I mean, if we were to build a 20,000 square foot building plus the parking and the crush pad out front, I mean, we would have to level this entire mountain, and then you'd destroy the beauty of it. One of the things we're really proud of is we've only disturbed about 2 acres of the 41 acres.
That's remarkable.
The rest of it is pristine and it's stunning.
Well, the fact that you go through the cave and pop out the other side
Right.
was an amazing surprise to me.
Yeah.
But it makes perfect sense.
It's funny because it ended up being one of Crystal and I's biggest surprises, because we envisioned it a decade ago, and it took us that long to realize it. I mean, it was just last year, March 19th, and that was our light at the end of the tunnel.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean, really. And now we get to walk out there every day. It's pretty awesome.
One of the words you kept coming up with again and again that we were very impressed with was how much it was a sense of community, that was part of your original idea.
My goodness, we acquired the property about 9 years ago, and from the very beginning, the vision was community. It wasn't about one family or one vineyard or one varietal. We wanted to be able to bring people together, not only people within the winemaking, create that experience as an extension of the families for the customers when they're here. So we really are all about community.
Well, of course, the wonderful irony of that is that from the time when you started this project to now, you became a family.
Yes, we did. We are, 9 years into the project and 2 kids later. We have a 4 and a 7-year-old, and so the kids have grown up here. They were literally a part of this from the very beginning when it was just a piece of property, and they've been with us from every step of the way. They've literally grown up here. They've been here for the construction. They've been here when they're not in school, day in, day out. They've ridden the tractors. They've peed on the tractor tires. They pee on the rocks outside. We told them they can't do that anymore now that we're open. They've got to use the proper restroom. But they've literally grown up here. We've done plenty of visits with friends and family with wines and had picnics and stared at those gorgeous views, and they've been a part of it every step of the way. When we actually concreted the floors here, before we brought anything in, before we brought barrels or tanks or any equipment, we had a roller skating party for the kids and all their friends. So the Bon Christiani kids were here, the Wolf's grandkids were here, our kids were here, their friends were here, and they brought their roller skates, their rollerblades, their scooters, and their skateboards, and we had a big party here before we brought any of the equipment in. So they were able to enjoy it when it was finished but empty, and now that it's completed, they still run around here like they own the place. So they love it. They feel very comfortable. They're right at home.
Well, it's funny when you realize that their memories of these caves will be quite unique, and you have the handprints to prove it.
We do. We waited. It took us about 4 hours to have those handprints made. We had to be here before it dried completely, but it had to be dry enough to where we could get it in there that the imprints would stay. So that was about a 4-hour-long project. They missed camp that day, but it was worth it. July the 30th, 2013.
Oh, it's perfect.
Is a day to remember.
It's
absolutely.
Wine business by its nature is patient.
Yes.
And building caves is a very patient process.
Yeah.
But you've been doing this for a dozen years.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people, when people ask about making wine and what's it like, and they really want to know about it, I say it's an exercise in patience. I mean, things do not happen really, really fast at our level of winemaking. If you're maybe a Gallo or one of the bigger operations, things are moving a lot faster. But at this level, everything's based in years. And so that didn't scare me. I just didn't know it was going to take 10 years of
Right.
my life. But then we had your normal business challenges, and partners come and go, and I'm on my 3rd management team, and I've got a really awesome board of directors, and it's a shared vision for this thing. I didn't have that with previous partners. That was part of the struggle. And
When you worked at other wineries, whose other caves impressed you?
I mean, early in my career, I was working with Dave and Yolanda Delgado at their first cave down on Atlas Peak. And that was just a raw, L-shaped cave with a couple niches and real rustic and raw. And I just thought it was amazing for storing barrels. One of the newer ones that really impressed me was O'Shaughnessy, up on Howell Mountain. And they didn't have any 90-degree angles. So there were no right-hand corners. Everything was real whimsical and flowing. And so that was my original design. Didn't have any right angles. Everything was free-flowing. Well, the proposals that came back were about 4 times the price of what I got now. So I told the contractors, I love right angles. Right angles are my favorite. I think that's great. So the design is laid out like a tic-tac-toe board. You have 3 tunnels running north, and then you have east and west. You have 3 tunnels that are varying sizes cross those. And so it's built for manufacturing to be able to, make wine back in there.
Everything flows easily from space to face.
Yeah.
It's also very good when you're going to have multiple wineries in the space because it gives plenty of corners where people can nest, so to speak.
Yeah. And then from a pure design standpoint, a winery at the end of the day is a manufacturing facility. Grapes are coming in and wine's going out.
Right.
And most wineries are set up with a front and a back, where and the grapes and deliveries and things normally are isolated in the back part of the winery. Well, I gave that up by putting this winery through the mountain, coming out the other side. So again, the tic-tac-toe design, so to speak, has a lot of flexibility for moving in and out of the space inside the winery. Because we don't have that. We basically only have one in and one out for production, where usually you'd have multiple ways to get in and out.
Usually you have a U type design.
Yeah. Our glycol system, we can heat and cool parts of the floor in certain sections of the cave if we want to. That's mainly for ML, if you're having some red wines that need to finish ML and you got to heat a space. Or conversely, if you're trying to keep it cold for Chardonnay fermentation, usually, because quite a few of us that are making wine here ferment their Chardonnays in barrel. So keeping the temperature cold is nice.
That's nice. That's a very increasingly popular style.
Yeah.
People like the richness of it. As the wife of the winemaker, and of course the person who has to watch the grapes developing in the course of the year, and then talk with the people who own the wineries, you get this great sense of the context where this wine comes from.
We've known these families that are with us here, and obviously our winery or our wine label is here along with 3 other winemaking families. We've spent a lot of time with the families, drinking the wine with them, learning about their winemaking style, learning about what's important to them, learning about how they like to explain their wines to people. And really we're here to tell the story of who those families are, what they're all about. Anything the customer wants to know specifically about the wine, we've educated ourselves from a technical standpoint, but really we like to make sure that they understand who the people are behind the labels.
I mean, we just finished our first harvest, and our production manager, Diane, and I, we always talk every day, and we laugh because every day until September 3rd of this year is brand new to us. So this is the first time we're doing this particular thing, right? And so it's fun. It's also can be a little irritating because maybe you didn't design something exactly right. But we're working through all that, and it's been really fun. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take just one person to make wine, right? I mean, it's a group effort. It's a community effort, whether it's, the whole community, like you were talking about in Italy and they do it, or your own family or your own cruise or whatever. It's not just one person, making wine.
One of the things we aim for in every tour, if possible, is for them to do a tasting in a cave. Because they've been lots of bars and lots of restaurants, and they've been maybe out to farms. But the cave experience is pretty unique to wine country.
It's very unique to wine country. A lot of wineries have physical caves, but most people use them for barrel storage, and they don't really utilize that space for anything other than that. In most cases, there's 3 that I'm aware of fully underground wineries in Napa. We're one of the 3, and so our entire experience takes place, entering the cave, staring at Soda Canyon, then walking through the entire cave, learning about the process of winemaking, looking at how we situated the barrels and how things flow underground, because the entire winery is underground. And then you end up exiting out the other side, so you've literally walked through the mountain and have the entire experience within the cave, and then on the front end and the back end with mountainous views of Soda Canyon on the beginning side, and on of Napa Valley on the exit on the back side. So they really do get the full scope of the entire winery in one space, with most of it being underground. And then, of course, once you exit out the light at the end of the tunnel, we call it, our light at the end of the tunnel, which is exciting. It always has been. And now that we've punched through and there's actually a door you can walk through, and you see that, you have that aha moment when you walk out and stare at the Napa Valley. And people love it.
It's
People
funny
love it.
how many times when I'm down below by Ragushi, and I'll point up and I'll point out where your
Right.
caves are. I said, see that saddle right there? They're right inside
Exactly.
that saddle.
You can't tell from the road, because the physical space is, in terms of all the winemaking equipment and everything, is underground,
Yes.
and you can't see the small outdoor area from the road, which is great, because it's hidden and it's unique and it's quiet and it's beautiful, a little hidden gem. But yeah, once you know where it is, it's interesting when you're driving on Silverado Trail or on 29 to be able to identify that we're literally in the side of that mountain.
In putting this together, what was logistically the hardest part of it?
Coordinating the efforts of the underground engineers, the cave guys actually doing the work, all the subs that are coming in to put everything in place. It's a very different environment than a building. I got a project manager dedicated. His name is Kelvin Morash, incredible man, and he put the whole thing together.
Amazing.
And it's tough, because this underground, how they work together side by side and what they're putting in.
Right.
I mean, I would not have been able to foresee a lot of those issues, and he was really, really, really good at it.
Right,
And then,
it's so different from a building, because with a building you have an exterior, people could work on the outside where people work on the inside.
Correct.
Here you only have an inside, and everyone wants to be in the same space at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a big challenge, and I mainly sat back and watched him do that, and then I was on site every day making the little decisions that they needed to have made, as things were progressing.
You know what the joke is, when you run your own business, you only work half days, but you can decide what 12 hours that should be.
We do work crazy hours. Both of us tend to get up really early. So
Well, especially in a business like this, which has a certain seasonal quality, things are based upon, at this time of the year we're going to be harvesting, at this time of the year we're going to be racking, at this time of the year we're going to be bottling. It's got a very seasonal quality, and you know that after everything's in the barrels, you're going to have time to breathe.
oh my gosh.
Remember your children's
Yeah.
names.
Yes, exactly. We all fall long. It kind of was a blur, because we literally opened the caves on September the 3rd, brought in our fruit the same day, our first bit of fruit the same day, and then opened up hospitality the next day, and we went gangbusters the entire fall season. We both worked about 20-hour days every day. So it was a bit of a blur. We look back and say our motto was just hang on. If we can just hang on till Christmas, we'll make it. We can just hang on till Christmas.
Well, you'll understand the concept that you always have to spend a certain amount of time working, not in your business, but on your business,
Right.
improving your systems. And the wine business, by its nature, has a built-in time for that. Because you're not going to be worrying about the grapes right now, they're in the barrels. You have that slower time
Right.
to put all the systems in
Exactly.
place.
Exactly. We've been spending a lot of time with marketing, spending a lot of time reaching out to the community here and introducing who we are and what we have to offer. We've been spending a lot of time on our systems. We just upgraded to a new POS system, and we're all still learning a little bit about that software. We're trying to fine-tune our skills before it gets super busy. Spent a lot of time on social media. Spent a lot of time launching our wine club and really fine-tuning that before we send it out to the masses. And so you're absolutely right. We've been spending a lot of time behind the scenes prepping for the year and really prepping for our goals about what we want to accomplish.
I heard a great description that making wine is easy. It's just about 30 or 40 steps that have to be done perfectly every single time.
At this level of winemaking, you get one shot. And there's no, I mean, it's sort of the beauty of it, right? You make 5 tons of, you bring in 5 tons of something, and it's 300 cases of whatever it is. And if it's the greatest wine you've ever made, there's only 300 cases, But in the reverse of that, if it's the worst wine you've ever made, there's only 300 cases, right? So that's, it's good either way.
Yep. If you go to a downtown tasting room where they pour the wines from 8 or 10 different wineries, well, it's still just a tasting room.
Right.
Here, when you're tasting from the 4 different families, well, there's their barrels.
Right.
There's the crush pad. There's the press that made them.
Exactly.
This is the place where the wine was created.
Yes, they get to see everything as it stands. We're constantly working in the cellar, so we have our winemakers from each of the winemaking families spend quite a bit of time here. So on any given day, it's very possible that you as a consumer could run into one or all of our winemakers and ask questions. Everybody's very involved. Everybody's very down to earth. Everybody loves to educate and interact with customers. So at any given point in time, you as a consumer could also meet the people that actually make the wine or meet the families. The families spend quite a bit of time up here as well.
Right.
So,
well, for them, for the families that produce the wine, this is just a wonderful opportunity because it gives them an integrated place where they can have their wines, develop their project, know that there's a future because there's another 13,000 square foot of caves.
Right. Yes, absolutely. This is a place where everybody involved in these 4 families can call home.
It'll be interesting to see how and when those children who were roller skating inside the cave start helping out at the crush pad.
Exactly.
Well, that was so much fun.
I really hate to leave this little piece of paradise, but that's another episode of Wine Country at Work.
start soon. Welcome everybody to the regular board meeting on Monday, September 14th. We are joined here by the board, Susan Strasser, who is remote. We have Jim Poole from the local paper, and we also have our district clerk, Ruth Van Duzen. At this point, would you please rise and join me in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have a couple of public comments tonight. The first one comes from Robert Beisler, and his comment is there any thought on shortening the UPK bus routes? On Friday, September 11th, we were told our 4-year-old would be dropped off at our house at 12:07. Sunday morning, we were called again and told they changed the route, and he is now being dropped off at 1:30. This means that our 4-year-old will be on a bus a minimum of an hour and a half. That is way too long with a child that age to be on the bus. This is after lunch. What if they need to use the bathroom? What about a nap? What about the hour of remote instruction they're receiving at home? 2 buses for the entire district means that these little 3- and 4-year-olds will be riding on the bus, if they take the bus, in the morning and after dismissal, for more than they will be in the classroom. Robert Beisler. The second one comes from Amanda Hanfield. Good evening, Board of Education. I would like to request to have paperless communication from the district. I feel giving parents the option to be paperless would result in a cost savings for the district. I have 2 children currently, but have asked in the past, when I had 4, that there will be a way to avoid the multiple mailings to my home. There are far too many times a year when we receive a single sheet of paper mailed home for each child that could easily be an email or text worth of information. The most recent example is attached. 2 mailings came to my home from the transportation department. I have opted my children out of transportation, so I was literally mailed 2 blank bus schedules. This is 2 pieces of paper, 2 envelopes, postage, and manpower wasted. I can only imagine how many people get this mailing who didn't need to and at what cost. Finally, just to drive the point home, no pun intended, the mail arrived today after the first day of transportation. Digital communication in this time of financial crisis is much more cost effective and can be more timely. Thank you, Amanda Hanfield. There are no other public comments, so I will move right on to superintendent items.
Thank you. I think before I begin, I'll just thank both of those individuals for sending in their comments. We are assessing the length of runs for all of our bus runs. We're doing about 28 bus runs times two each day. And while the majority of our bus runs are 60 minutes or less, we do have a small handful that exceed that. And so we are working closely with our transportation team on making some adjustments. So I certainly appreciate that feedback, and I share the concern regarding our youngest students being on the bus for what seems to be an excessive ride, and we will certainly be addressing that in the next few days. As far as mailings, I think if this pandemic has taught us anything, it has taught us that we need to increase our digital capacity district-wide. That said, we still have a large number of individuals who are not digitally connected and who do not have routine access. So I think more and more of our correspondence is digital with parents in terms of progress reports, some report cards, and a lot of communication from principals that used to be in the form of newsletters or letters home. But I think the suggestion to take a look at opting out of paper correspondence is something we can certainly share with the management team. And I think probably over time we could build capacity. Appreciate those points of feedback. As far as my opening report, I will just say that day 1 was overall a very successful return to school for our students and staff, and I thank and salute our faculty, our staff, our students, our parents and families, and our administrative team and others who made that happen for us. Like any opening plan, there are always some areas where we feel we can improve. And most, probably not all, but most of those areas are on our radar tonight. But I'd like to start off by just having each of our principals and program leaders provide the board with a brief update on how the first day looked in each of our 4 buildings and in our remote environment, and also for our special education students. And then we'll talk a little bit about our next steps. So why don't we begin with Ryder Elementary School. Our new principal, this is Jessie Westfall, is with us. And Jessie, how was everything at Ryder today?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting us to speak tonight. And it's perfect timing. I feel like we're coming off of a very exciting day that we've been anticipating all summer long. And I just wanted to thank you all for your support and understanding this summer as we've been preparing for our reopening today. It went very well overall. Students came back very happy to be here. They were wearing some pretty snazzy masks, which coordinated with their outfits. I was slightly jealous, but they were all, you could tell even from their eyes, they were smiling. And considering that every single process and procedure was turned upside down this summer, I would say everything went far better than we could have expected it to. Staff members were very flexible, very helpful in troubleshooting the minor glitches that came up along the way with scheduling and things that we couldn't really have seen without putting it into practice. We'll be making some minor adjustments to our bus and parent pickup procedures starting tomorrow, and something's already gone out to families to try and kind of just troubleshoot a few areas of parent backup, I would say. But overall, parents were very understanding. I appreciate your flexibility with that. It took a little bit longer than we had anticipated, especially for parent pickup. So overall, we're very happy to be back, and hopefully we continue down this successful path, over the next however long. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Westfall. Mr. Eric Whipple is principal at Rady's Elementary School. And Mr. Whipple, how were things with Team Rady's today?
Great. Good evening, everyone. I think we had an extremely successful opening at Rady's today. It was wonderful to see all of the students there in the building. It's been a long time since they've been there, and they were smiling. They were, at least I think they were smiling. It was hard to tell most of the day because of masks, but they were wearing their masks all day. They were happy to be there. They were excited. Our teachers were as well, our staff, everyone was really extremely flexible. I think overall things went very smoothly today. Our biggest goal here today, as far as our reopening committee, was getting students in the building and then getting them out of the building at the end of the day. And with all the different changes, that was our main focus. Our teachers took care of from 8 until 2, and they did a wonderful job really reacquainting our students to the building. We had some goals on what time we wanted everyone in by, and what time we wanted our buses rolling, and what time we wanted student or parent pickup to be completed. We were able to hit every one of our goals, and so our reopening team met at the end of the day to debrief on the day, and we have a couple of 2 or 3 goals for tomorrow to target and to refine for tomorrow. But I think it's nothing that we can't straighten out and move forward. So extremely a good day, and I just appreciate all the parents, students, and our faculty and staff for making it happen. It was nice to see everyone back.
Thank you, Mr. Whipple. And Mr. Haslam, Golding Middle School.
Yeah, I can echo everyone's comments, our first 2 principals, because we were just really excited to have everyone back today. The kids came in, I think, a little uneasy, not exactly knowing what to expect. But, just moving around the hallways throughout the day, you quickly saw that they were settling in pretty quickly. So that was nice to see. Our EAs, TAs, and teachers were fantastic. They were flexible. They were patient. There were some wrinkles that popped up through the day, but they were pretty small wrinkles that we were able to iron out fairly quickly. Much like everyone else, we were anxious and eager to see what dismissal and arrival would look like. But at the end of the day, I think both processes went pretty well. And we left the day knowing some things that we can focus on for tomorrow and the rest of the week. One thing that we did at the middle school was we started the week on a modified schedule to get in our COVID-19 related tutorials. So that caused some scheduling conflicts, but once again, we were able to work through them. So tomorrow we start on a normal schedule, and we're eager to see how that pans out, and we're pretty confident that that it should go pretty smooth. So yeah, we're excited to get back at it tomorrow, and just to continue to improve on the new protocols and practices that we're using at Golding.
Very good, thank you. And just as a reminder to the board and our viewers at home, at our elementary and middle levels, students are in cohorts and they're in the same classroom for largely the full day, with teachers rotating in and out of their classrooms. At our high school, Mr. Barr is with us tonight, and our high school students are on a hybrid schedule. And due to the nature and the complexities of their schedule, they actually move at times from room to room. So we've reduced the capacity in the building by half. Mr. Barr.
Yeah, so first and foremost, just awesome to see students back in school. It was really exciting to see kids in classrooms, excited to be there. I think I was most pleased today with how well our health and safety protocols went, from mask wearing to our transitions, to just our one-way traffic and our movement patterns. I think that I gave out one disposable mask, and that was only because a student wore a neck gaiter, not because he came in with anything. He just didn't realize he couldn't wear a neck gaiter. So I'm very happy with that. I was really interested to see how our staggered transitions from period to period went, and that coincides with our sanitizing schedule. That also went very well. Just one or two things that we'll take a look at for tomorrow as far as trying to speed up the process. We allowed students to transition outside if they wanted to, which was great. A lot of students took advantage of that. So that was really cool to see. We also have, like Mr. Mumanthe said, the remote learning piece, the hybrid piece. That went well. I think that is something that we will, as a faculty, grow into as we go through the first couple weeks of school and beyond. And as I said in a recent video that I sent to our students about remote learning, we've never had to do this before, so please be patient. And it seemed like students and faculty were really great with it, and really kind of, I think got it off going on the right foot today. I talked to many teachers at the end of the day who learned something about that. Yep, I'm going to change where I have the camera, or one of my students told me X, Y, and Z that I didn't realize I could do during the Google Meet, that kind of thing. So I think overall things went well. Still working out some kinks here with transportation and a little bit with IT, but nothing that wasn't unexpected. There were really no surprises today, which I think was great.
Thank you. And Mr. Barr talked a little bit about remote instruction. We have around 300 students who have opted for remote or hybrid instruction. And at the K-5 level, Mr. McDonald, who's our Director of Teaching and Learning, is providing some direct support to those teachers and families. So Mr. McDonald, could you talk a little bit about our remote instruction?
I sure can. So our remote team was planning in last week, getting together and working out how remote instruction would look like at the pre-K through 5 level. And our remote teachers actually had a meet and greet Friday afternoon after school at our technology and materials pickup outside of Golding. So our classroom teachers that are teaching in the remote setting actually got to see their students face to face when they came to pick up their materials, which was great. And over the weekend, there was a lot of communication between the teacher and the families as they were getting ready for the setup and launch for today for the first day of remote instruction. And just as the other principals have mentioned, there were our own learning curves with our remote instruction. So just like a classroom teacher would do on the first day of school, you teach your routines and processes and procedures. Our remote teacher spent time helping troubleshoot logins and passwords and programs and those kind of things with families, and phone calling and a lot of correspondence today for those initial setups and troubleshooting, and things went really well. There's still a bit of outreach that's going on, some parent Q&As and other things with our remote families that our remote teachers are hosting. So as a future planning, we're still rolling out our virtual classroom tool for our primary students. We're hoping to have that up and running by week's end or early next week. And in total, we have 4 full-time Cobblesville-Richmondville teachers that are providing remote instruction at the pre-K through 5 level in small grade level clusters. So things are off and running in the remote pre-K through 5 level right now.
Susan.
Mr. McDonald, can I just clarify? So we have teachers who are either doing online or in classroom instruction. We're not having people having to juggle both.
At the pre-K through 5 level, we have dedicated remote teachers.
Okay.
So their student load is 100% remote instruction.
And in the middle school and high school, are there teachers doing both or no?
Middle school and high school, there are teachers doing both.
Thank you.
Yeah, Susan, that's certainly a challenge when teachers have some students in front of them and some at home. I touched base with a lot of those teachers today, and they did really well with it and learned some things today, and I think we'll grow into that.
We're learning at this meeting too. Yeah.
Very good. We also have with us Mrs. Osfeld, who's the Director of Student Services, and Mrs. Bramsky, who is our Assistant Director overseeing special education. And I thought they could take a moment to just talk a little bit about the extra care and attention that we have placed upon some of our highest need learners in our special education programs.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Happy first day with students. It sounds like everyone is off to a great start, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. I'd like to start off tonight by sharing some numbers with you. For the 2020-2021 school year, we have a total of 194 special education students participating in programming. This would include 134 CR students and 60 out-of-district students, which include Worcester, Middleburg, Stanford, Cherry Valley, Duanesburg, Sharon Springs, Canajoharie, Gilboa, Ashland, Wyndham Jewett, South Courtright, Chalmont, Schoharie, Margaretville, Jefferson, and Skanevis for a total of 16 districts. We have a total of 42 special education students this year who opted for remote learning, and that would be 27 CR students and 15 out-of-district students. Our special education programming at CR this year consists of our self-contained and consultant teacher options. In our self-contained programs, we have several programs throughout the district. We have 4 at Ryder, we have 4 at Rades, we have 5 at Golding, and 3 at the high school. Students in these programs that opted for in-person learning attend school Monday through Friday in person at each building. Students that participate in our K through 12 consultant teacher programs and chose in-person learning attend school Monday through Friday at Ryder, Rades, and Golding. And at the high school, many of these students attend 4 days to receive additional supports that they may need. This year, each special education program has its own learning plan based on students' needs. On the remote side, some students are live streaming into classrooms. Some students are working one-to-one with teachers and or teaching assistants. And some students are working in small groups participating in Google Meet. To cover both remote and in-person students, our special education staff have very full schedules this year, meeting their students' educational and technological needs. Our special education students will continue to receive their related services according to their IEPs. These services include OT, speech, PT, and counseling. These will occur in person as well as remotely. And similar to our special education teachers, our related service providers also have very full days meeting the needs of remote and in-person students. Overall, our first day went very well. Just like all of the building reports tonight, a lot of planning and prep went into making the first day go smooth. Students were happy to be here at school. Sure was great to see them. We certainly have some kinks to work out with scheduling and a few with remote learning options. But I'd like to say a big thank you to our staff for their hard work, and also a big thank you to our students and families for their patience, their kindness, and their understanding. And we look forward to watching every single kink work itself out over the week. Thanks.
Okay, certainly a lot to consider. Any questions from any of our board members on either the school programs, the remote instruction, or special education?
I don't think it's a question, not specifically for us, but I know BOCES wide, NARIC wide. How did the network perform today?
Today, I don't think that we had any major bandwidth problems. I know that our IT department had reached out to staff with some bandwidth conservation measures that we could implement here so that we were utilizing as little of the bandwidth as possible for sort of background functions. But it's something that we're pretty hyper vigilant in monitoring, and BOCES is actually monitoring that on our behalf. So they have real-time data on every district's bandwidth usage, and they are communicating directly with IT directors when we start to approach that cap. If we hit the cap for bandwidth, it's not a quick shutdown, it's a throttle down. And so it will slow the experience of all users. And the problem is just capacity within NARIC. We all purchase certain caps on bandwidth. And as long as not everybody is exceeding, we can share bandwidth. But once everybody is up to their purchase limits, they get throttled down. Principals or Scott, anything to add on that? I was not aware of any widespread network problems today.
Bandwidth was not an issue, and the biggest thing, because the high school, you figure there's more remote teaching and learning going on because of the hybrid model. And one of the keys is not, if you're a student who's in person watching the teacher, you don't join that Google Meet. The Google Meet part of the lesson is for the kids who are at home. That I think is going to keep us in a good place.
Thank you. I will say that right now, for us, a bigger concern than bandwidth is actually just hardware. We have deployed just about everything that we own to families, students, and staff. We're awaiting a rather large order of new Chromebooks, but like every school in the country that placed orders, they're backlogged. They should be here very soon, and they'll be checked in, inventory, and deployed. But right now, our bigger technological concerns are hardware. It's Chromebooks, laptops, webcams, microphones, and our principals have done a great job distributing resources when they are limited. But hopefully we can continue to throttle up. Any other questions for our principals or directors?
Just a big thank you to all of you from the board. Today's first day is over. Tomorrow's day too, but good job, guys, really. A lot of planning, a lot of headaches went into this, and all your planning and hard work paid off, it seems like. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. When people ask how today went, I say a lot of things went right, and we're paying attention now to the things that need to be better. But and I know Brett spoke to it, but I know on many reopening committee calls, the concern was what do we do with non-compliant students? And honestly, I was in all 4 buildings today. I saw one student without a mask, and that student very quickly put it on when approached by staff. So we had nearly 100% compliance from our students. So thank you, students. Thank you, families. We could not have been successful today without your support. Okay. I want to talk just briefly. Mr. Tryon at our last board meeting spoke very eloquently about the need for federal advocacy. As he pointed out, and as we have shared with our families and community, the COVID crisis has left an enormous hole in New York State's budget, and that hole is threatening the aid flow to school districts across New York State. Last week, we were able to launch an informational piece on our website and social media, and we'll be following that up this week with some infographics for students and parents and families. It's been very favorably received. We've had lots of parents who, A, were not aware of the state aid crisis, and B, have already taken time to call or email or write to Congressman Delgado's office and Senators Gillibrand and Schumer. So it's real important that we keep our advocacy full court press on because a 20% loss in aid here at Cobble-Scorsonville would be catastrophic. We are facing similar withholdings of aid for things like our universal pre-kindergarten grant. I know that we spoke earlier with Mr. Beisler's letter about concerns for scheduling and transportation. I will tell you that I'm not sure why they call it universal pre-kindergarten because it is not universal. And even the transportation for universal pre-kindergarten students is not aided. And a lot of people don't realize that. So for our kindergarten through 12th grade students, every mile that they're loaded and riding a bus to or from school, we're reimbursed to the tune of what, Tracy, 84, 86 cents? 89 cents on the dollar for per loaded mile for those students. For UP pay students, 1 year or 2 years difference in age, the aid is zero. So when the state says universal, we beg to differ. And so we're advocating hard for the restoration of those dollars. And I guess I'll pause here because I know the board's been very involved in advocacy. Anything to add or any questions on our advocacy board?
Was that grant released?
Yeah, so the UPK grant was released, but like all grants coming out of the state education department, our allocation has a 20% withholding. So we've adjusted the length of day and some of our other program expenses in the UPK grant, and we'll be monitoring between now and December. Other questions? All right, before I move to acknowledgements, the last thing I have is an update for the board and a short discussion on athletics. As part of the state's reopening plan, the New York State Department of Health articulated some standards for athletics and recreational activities in New York, and we've been monitoring that since July. In August, our New York State Public High School Athletic Association came out with some guidelines for the safe operation of athletics in our state. And in the time that's ensued these past few weeks, each of our sections of the state has been looking at that guidance and making some decisions on whether to proceed with fall athletics or not. And then within each section, and we're in section 2, each of the athletic leagues in that section has been doing the same thing. Mr. Henry is on the call tonight, and I know that he and Mr. Kimball have been very involved at both the Colonial Council League and also the Section 2 level. And like all the sections and leagues across the state, athletic directors and other program leaders have been trying to determine the degree to which we can safely offer athletics to students this fall. The earliest athletics can begin in public high schools in New York State is a week from today, which is next Monday. And the sports that we offer were categorized into either one of 3 categories, either low or moderate or high risk when it comes to the potential for COVID transmission. Here at Cobalstow-Richardville, our high-risk sports for the fall were football and volleyball, and those sports were moved from the fall athletic season to a modified season next spring. So the state took a leadership role in that area by moving those high-risk sports. They left the decisions for moderate and low risk level sports to each section and league. And Section 2 endorsed that the moderate and low risk sports could proceed. And on Friday, the Colonial Council's meeting of athletic directors decided to move forward. So it made it an individual school by school choice. I can tell you that we have had many, many meetings at the administrative level. We have had numerous meetings with Mr. Kimball and Mr. Henry from our athletic department. I know they've worked very, very closely with our coaches on protocols and procedures for practices and games, but there are requirements built into the system that are, if not logistically challenging, perhaps logistically impossible for us to do and do well this fall. And that comes down to the transportation of athletes to away contests, the supervision of spectators at all home contests, and the masks and social distancing and disinfection that is required. We have labored tirelessly over this decision because we know that we have competitive and eager and excited student athletes and that we have dedicated and talented coaches. But in the end, our decision-making process was guided exclusively with an eye on safety. And we kept coming back to the question, if this is how we operate school, like we did today, can we apply those same strict standards to athletics and do so with fidelity for the protection of our coaches and student athletes? Late this afternoon, a meeting involving myself, our middle and high school principal, along with Mr. Henry and Mr. Kimball. We had a short discussion, and I advised them at that point that I would be recommending to our board this evening that we postpone our fall athletic season. What that would do is it would have us working very closely with the Colonial Council and Section 2 and trying to create for our fall athletes in the low and moderate risk sports an opportunity next spring on a modified and shortened season to compete. But we really did not feel that we had the capacity and the resources and the fidelity to operate these programs safely and efficiently for students this fall. So I'm offering that as a recommendation and a starting point for discussion. And at this point, I would be happy to hear guidance and suggestions and questions from our board. I also want to defer to Mr. Henry. I know he's on the line. And John, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything I left out or anything that you'd like to add from an athletic director perspective?
No, other than Section 2 has, they did say that they cannot prohibit any school from playing in another season. So that has been clarified in the last couple of days, that we would have an opportunity possibly to play fall sports in the spring. So that was good news today. Of course, I'm deeply saddened by the situation. And as Mr. Monty said, this has been weighing on all parties involved on our minds for a long time now. So.
And we've been also in close contact with the other schools in our Colonial Council. It is increasingly likely that between 3 and 5 of our public high schools will be postponing either all or some of their fall sports seasons. And all of us are engaged in this decision-making process here this week, because the state has athletics scheduled to start a week from now. Other questions, comments, feedback?
Yeah, I think that most people that know me know that I'm a huge proponent for athletics at Collegeville, Richmondville, and this, it really does pain me to see that we are going to be postponing the fall athletic schedule, but I'm 100% behind it. I agree with what Carl's synopsis was. And I just hope that we can push the fall sports to postpone it into the spring. It does pain me to say that because I'm a huge fan of Bulldog athletics, but I see no other choice in the matter than to postpone.
All right, I'm going to say something. I am extremely disappointed, and I am not a proponent of this decision at all. I understand it. I get it. I appreciate the thought and the process that went into it, but I'm not for it at all. I guess one of my big questions is if the other schools in the council go ahead and play, who do we have left to play in the spring? So if we can play soccer in the spring, who's left to play if they've already had their season in the summer? I guess, John, that would be a question for you.
Yeah, right now I can't with any certainty tell you who else is not offering fall sports in the Colonial Council, other than Waterville is definitely out. I know there's three other schools that are very close and are awaiting their board meetings, some of them tonight, some of them Wednesday, to make their final decision. I do know that the WAC conference, which for some of you is more of it's a Western athletic conference with Fonda, Canajoharie, I'm trying to think of some other schools, Schoharie, Middleburg, Duanesburg. They have opted to go with low risk sports, so that would leave soccer out for that league. So there would be a possible option to play the WAC schools in the spring.
Yeah, and Amy, I think it's a fair question. I think what superintendents are struggling with right now is whether a district opts in or out, we will be short opponents. Because those who play the fall season will have schools that are missing, and those who postpone the fall season will have schools that are missing. So in either scenario, I think there will be fewer contests, or at least fewer opponents in each of those two seasons.
Right. So then I guess that leads to my second question. God forbid our 20% is apart, and the money is just we don't have it. Is that's gonna be one of the first things that's cut. So is this their only, so is this my child's only opportunity as a senior to play her last season of soccer? And then if she can't play it in the fall because of COVID, then she can't play it in the spring because of finance.
I think that's a fair question that we've also been wrestling with, and I think there were two obstacles to athletics this year, whether it's fall, winter, or spring. I think the first and more serious is COVID. None of us know whether the COVID situation is going to get better or worse as the year progresses. So, I mean, I want to be very clear. We are very hopeful for a compressed 3-sport or 3-season contest schedule this spring. But if the COVID incidence rate goes up and we are all forced into remote, that will jeopardize athletics. There's no doubt. So I think that's our first major obstacle. And the second, as you point out, is finances. You know, we have an emerging financial plan that would allow us to close that gap after December if there is not a flow of aid. And I do think there will be some belt tightening. At this point, it is not a financial plan that includes the elimination of athletics. But you know, we've got a lot of bridges to cross and rivers to wade through before those decisions are finalized by the board. And ultimately, those budget adjustments would be reviewed and approved by this board. So there's certainly going to be some ability for this board to influence those decisions. But I really think, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think COVID is probably the bigger threat to winter and spring than finances.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So that's my bigger worry is if we go from 1% population to 5 or 7 or 9, what does that do statewide for athletics?
So I guess then I would say let's get it in when we can.
Well, and we took a very good look at that. You know, when you look at the guidelines that are in place and some of the precautions that we would have to do, there are scheduling impacts because of how schools are scheduled. There are transportation logistics. You know, in some cases, it would be either reduced numbers or multiple buses per team to get students safely to these events. And then there's the requirement, the league basically relieved officials of all supervisory duties for off-field attendance. And so the expectation is that we are fully staffing every home athletic contest to monitor compliance for masks and social distancing for spectators. So
I'm an official, and I don't have any requirements to monitor those things, you know, except for if they're harassing students. You know, the players.
I don't know, I'm just going by the guidance that John shared with me, and it explicitly states that for officials, they are relieved of any supervisory role for spectators. And there's an explicit request that we staff every home athletic contest. So that's just going to come at a cost. I mean, it's not an insurmountable cost.
And I know for soccer, because I could see all the rules, they were only allowing 2 spectators per player anyways. So I can't imagine that that would be that much of a job for you know, the 2 parents at home that the staff would be that much of an
Yeah, no,
I'm just putting it out there.
I think spectators would probably have 70 or 80 spectators maximum if you look at your typical. Soccer would be our bigger roster. Cross country is a little different just because of how people spectate that sport. But no, that's exactly what we want to talk about. I'm glad that you're raising this. Are there other questions either related to or separate to this?
Do you think that we're not going to get full enrollment for some teachers that are not going because of COVID?
John, that's a good question. Did we assess at all whether we'd see a drop off in participation because of COVID? I don't know if we surveyed parents explicitly. Our early summer survey, Mary, showed that parents were largely comfortable with athletics. That had the highest score among a range of activities. But John, did your coaches have any feedback otherwise?
I've been checking our family ID registration daily, but the numbers are down. However, I think that's more the reason numbers are down because I think families are still waiting to see what we are going to rule on here. So those numbers are kind of a false read, in my opinion.
We also have some transportation logistics, Mary, mainly at the high school, because although practices would conceivably be 5 days a week, our students are only on campus for 2 days out of that 5-day cycle. So we have opened up sporting opportunities for remote learners. So whether a student is hybrid or remote at the high school, they can participate, but we have said transportation would be a family or student activity.
I think for me, it was the timeline that encouraged me to delay the sports. If there was a larger distance between when we brought them all together for the first time since March, and then we added sports, that I'd be more comfortable. But the fact that it's not even an incubation period for to see if, if one kid showed up today and he was COVID positive, we didn't know it, we don't know how far that's going to go, let alone now let's throw them not only together in the field, but bringing them to another town. So, Schopeg County right now is really low with our counts, and we're going to ask these kids to then transport to another school or bring other kids into our school to compete. And I just feel like it's too early to add that. That's my thought. I mean, I'm all for sports. My son would love to play, but I'm not completely comfortable with the timeline.
I'm pretty sure my children won't be speaking to me tonight. That's a good one. Others? Steve, Josh?
Yeah, I think, my kids don't play sports. I'm a sports advocate myself. I think we're going to struggle to keep the school. So, we start getting a spike in our school, they close the school, or go to remote learning, and go sports anyway. So if we could postpone it, potentially half a season in the spring, that would be better than just canceling it altogether and not doing anything. So if we can keep the school open, and like you said, it's not a financial issue later on, and if COVID stays low, and we have a better guideline per se, that is how we can do it, and how the school can do it, and then we'll be for it. I think COVID is not the worst idea.
I agree. I just thought all along that the compressed spring schedule made more sense and disappointing. I know certain sections of the state did that. I'm disappointed in section 2 where they left it. I don't think this is something that should have been left to school, but we don't have any control over that. And I'm also bothered by sort of hypocritical about the standards we have for phys ed right now versus allowing interscholastic sports. It's just, it is a double standard, and I just think it's too early. That I'd like us to get our feet on the ground, get students back in school. There's going to be enough hiccups and issues we're going to have to deal with to add that separate way. And by doing a compressed spring schedule, then, as I said, we don't know what's going to happen, but at least it gives an potential opportunity for these students to participate in a sport that they enjoy in the springtime.
To add to your point too, with double standards, you can have banning orders to inquire. How can we say we can have banning orders to inquire that we can play sports? And I think that's advantage. And you get poor kids that love to play race kids and sing in the chorus, and they don't necessarily play sports, so in a way, that's without we can play sports. So I do think that double standard bothers a lot of people.
Well, I do know that one of the guidelines for soccer is that they should have to open access. So then they are not getting all over each other. So that, in that sense, it is different than orchestra and choir, But yeah, I get what you're all saying. I'm not changing my mind though. I am against it, and I am extremely disappointed. And I know you all can understand in the fact that I'm the only one on the board that has a child that's a senior this year who had the rug literally taken out from underneath them last year with the prom, and then this year there's no sports to start off. I haven't seen any fanfare for seniors. There's no senior lounge. He goes 2 days a week with only 4 classes on those 2 days. I mean, it is just, they can't even imagine these seniors can't even imagine having a prom this year. There's no homecoming. The list just goes on and on and on. And it was one thing. I mean, the coach was sending daily workouts for them. It was one thing that they had, and now it's gone too. So I'm just, as a mom, As a board member, and as a teacher, I get it. As a mom, I'm devastated. So.
And I think you've articulated very well. I mean, the collateral damage of COVID for our young adults has been immeasurable. And I agree 100%. And it breaks, I think, all of our hearts to see what we used to offer, what we used to enjoy, and what we're able to right now. So I mean, I am entirely empathetic to the point you make, and I would say to our students, some of whom are probably watching tonight, that we hear you and we feel your pain, and we're going to do our best to retool. But you're right, I mean, there's been tremendous sacrifice, tremendous, and not that there's any comfort in it, but it is global, you know. And I think that this is a generation of students whose schooling and coming of age and going to college is forever going to be marked by this pandemic. And we will do our best to provide alternatives, but you're absolutely right. It has robbed kids of many things that we enthusiastically know. Susan, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I keep finish what you're saying, but it seems medically unlikely that we'd be able to have different risk factors be weighed by the end of this fall season. But in a practical sense, is there? It seems to me that there is usually a lot of advanced planning that has to happen for planning games and practices more so than for some other activities. So is there any realistic possibility in what Amy was talking about for doing a trial period of not doing it and then reassessing it at a certain time frame, not just for the fall season, but when we get into the middle of winter season, where the planning usually is starting now, I think. So I'm wondering, is that actually a realistic possibility that we could consider?
So just let me repeat. So the question is, if we start with no sports right now and things change, could we then start up in a week or 2 or 3 weeks from now? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I don't think 2 weeks is reasonable for me. First of all, I know this was a horrible, awful decision. Nobody's going to be happy with the result, but there was no way there was going to be a good result here because it's weighing two things that can't both happen. But at some point, and I don't think it could be in 2 weeks, but at some point, could we say we'll reassess? There's no COVID in the community in a month. Maybe it's safe now. At some point, could that reassessment happen? And how long would it take to ramp up and actually reinsert sports if we wanted to do that?
Yeah, I think the decision as far as the fall goes with the scheduling would be awful tough to reinsert us into the fall schedule. Though I would say it's not impossible, because with no sectionals going on, I think the league would be accommodating to us and allowing us to work in as many games as we possibly could, wherever that falls. But it would be extremely difficult for this fall. More likely the winter, and we usually start talking scheduling for the winter in November or early November, late October.
Okay, thank you.
If not sooner.
So to John Henry's point, Susan, we would be revisiting this decision as early as late October so that we're planning for participation in winter athletics. Other discussion?
Because of the low and moderate risk sports, outside of soccer, tennis, and cross country, what is there anything else? For all sports, I mean, you know about the numbers you were mentioning, just soccer. I mean, what exactly are we?
Yeah, John, our fall slate was soccer, cross country, tennis, volleyball, football.
Yeah, so football and volleyball were obviously high risk. That got moved by the state, and the remaining sports were our low risk sports, cross country and golf, and our moderate risk sport was soccer for boys and girls. That's the question.
A low-risk sport, is the golf, the tennis, and the cross country, or is it just everything else?
Well, we as a district can opt in or out of different levels. I can tell you, I think John spoke to the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference. They've opted for a low-risk sports season. So there are districts that have done that. That's certainly something we can discuss here. I think for us, some of the logistics are still challenging, just in terms of safe practice, sanitation, spectators, transportation of kids. I know, John, for the soccer, because so many schools are on staggered schedule, they were moving all games to night games. For things like golf that are not played under the lights, I don't know that we would have transportation to get athletes to the different golf courses. I would imagine for a match, you would need probably a 3:30 or 4 o'clock start at the latest.
Yeah, it would be tough. I looked at the schedule prior to our meeting today, Mr. Momenthay, and Mr. Hemme, I believe, said a 4:30 would be earliest we could leave. That does not bode well to try to get a golf match in. And we're only losing daylight, we're not gaining.
And their big challenge is just the social distancing on buses. We definitely could run our afternoon bus runs with fewer buses, but we would need more kids on bus. Susan?
It's probably kind of moot because we have to follow what the state says anyway, but I don't think there's a lot of science behind the designation of different sports as high and low risk. That's best guesses, but from my perspective, knowing what I know about how COVID is transmitted, cross country actually with kids breathing very hard and following exactly the same path right after each other, I don't think can be categorized as low risk. So, unless they wear their masks, and I don't know if that spoils the thing. So for whatever that's worth, the riskiness of different sports, I think, is a big guess from what everybody's making.
So I would go back to Amy's question and say that is a scenario that we had contemplated as a team. Do we buy in at just the varsity level for some of the reasons that we discussed tonight? Do we buy in at the low risk level? And I know that when John and Justin and I met with Brett and Jeremiah, we just had concerns logistically about doing this safely and doing this well, based on the guidelines we've been given. And timeliness is an issue, and no fault to the folks in the Colonial Council on Section 2, but Colonial Council made the decision Friday afternoon, and the guidance document came out today. So we're really forced into making decisions a week before the start of regular practice, and I know that everybody's playing catch up with the state on regs and guidance, but it's really hard to make decisions in a vacuum. And in many cases, we've had to do that. And in some cases, I'm sure the board feels like they're having. Other feedback questions? So Bruce and I had discussed briefly this afternoon just procedurally, and typically boards of education do not opt in or out of athletic seasons. There are some procedural moves where boards would opt in or out of leagues, but not necessarily seasons. So I don't know if you want to talk about the guidance you got from this.
No, I spoke to Jay Warona this afternoon and to ask him for guidance on what are boards doing relative to this type of question. And he suggested that we kind of stay away from a vote. It's not illegal, but he said you don't want to set a precedent such as what we're doing. So I would, based on what he said, I don't think we need to have a formal vote.
We don't. I mean, I looked with John at the bylaws and constitution for the Colonial Council. And it appears, if Mr. Barr is still on the line, that the weight of decision is actually on the high school principal and athletic director, who each participate in the league in different capacities. I certainly view my job as superintendent here to help inform their decision making. And so, the purpose of me bringing this up at the board meeting tonight is first and foremost to listen to your questions, concerns, and ideas. And second, to kind of take the temperature in the room regarding consensus, because I certainly don't want to direct our vote differently than the board as a whole would prefer. So absent a vote, I'm really just looking for either consensus or consent, and then we can inform the section or the league of our students. So again, just to frame it, and we can certainly discuss it further, but at this point, my recommendation would be to the board that we notify the Colonial Council in Section 2 that we desire to postpone the fall season and to work with them to create that opportunity for our students in the spring. And I know there are some objections. Are there any other objections that have not been discussed or that you'd like to bring? Well, these are hard, painful decisions to our students, our student athletes, our coaches, and our friends who are watching. You have our word that we will do everything in our power to create this opportunity for you safely in an alternative format this spring. And Mr. Barr and I will work with Mr. Kimball and Mr. Henry and do everything we can to make that happen for all of our students. I thank you. All right, in closing, I just want to thank the board for their leadership since March, and especially this summer and on our reopening committee. To our management team and our admin council for their leadership and their support of your team's work. Our faculty and staff for a very strong start to the school year. There's a group of folks that lead, but often from behind the scenes, and I'd just like to thank our association leaders, the folks who lead our 3 professional organizations, the Teachers Association, the Press for Support, and the administrators. And then the biggest thank you really goes to our students and their families. Today could not have happened without their support, without their flexibility, and without their encouragement. And we have said it all along, we will only open when safe, and we will not stay open if it is not safe. And that is a promise we take very seriously, and that we continue to pledge to our families. So thank you everyone for a successful opening, and Mr. Pratt, thank you. Go right back to you, John.
Consensus items. Consideration of the last Board of Education minutes, consideration of Committee on Special Ed recommendations, and lastly, consideration of Committee on Preschool Special Ed recommendations. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Items for consideration. We have quite a few personnel tonight. The first section is substitute, temporary, and miscellaneous appointments. Unclassified civil service appointment.
Thank you. Recommending Elizabeth Borkowski to a 3-year probationary appointment as a teacher of music. Her initial assignment will be at the high school. The effective date would be October 14th of 2020, and her salary would be as per contract at step M22.
Move to approve.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now let's do substitute, temporary, and miscellaneous.
Thank you. 2 recommendations. Recommending Benjamin Libator to a long-term substitute position as a teacher of special education. The effective dates would be September 15th of this year through February 15th of 2021. And as per contract, he would be eligible for salary at step B8 of the CRTA salary schedule. And Anne Marie Marichulo is being recommended to an annual appointment as a substitute teacher, aide, and TA effective September 14th with payment at board-approved rates.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Personnel again, adjustments and or elimination of position.
Yes, recommending the following FTE adjustment. Teacher of reading, Julie David-Jones, recommended to go from a 0.4 FTE to a 1.0 FTE. And the purpose of that change is to help support remote instruction.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Leave of absence, unpaid leave.
Yes, Jennifer Bedreau has requested a child care leave of absence. The approximate dates of her leave are December 9th of 2020 through January 21st of 2021. Radine DeMarco has requested a leave of absence for a period of 4 months from her position as a school teacher aide. The effective dates are September 11th of this year through December 31st. And Katie Pangman has requested a leave of absence from her position as a teaching assistant for 2 months. The effective dates are September 11th through November 13th of this year.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Resignation, retirement.
Yes, Benjamin Libator, who we have just appointed to a long-term substitute position, has requested resignation from his probationary appointment as a teacher of special education, effective September 14th. Brenda Primo has requested resignation from her assignment as a school teacher aide, effective September 10th. Peter Poutrement has requested resignation from his assignment as a school teacher aide. Angelique Schmidt has requested resignation from her assignment as a school teacher aide. And Nicole Van Glad has requested resignation from her appointment as a teacher of music. All of those are effective August 31st.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the last on the personnel, others.
Yes, Ryan Wilson is being recommended for reassignment as an elementary physical education teacher. This would be at CRTA B1 salary rate, and the effective dates of his appointment would be September 8th through October 30th of 2020.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have a contract to review, the sports medicine contract.
Yes, this is, will be a renewal contract with, Proactive Physical Therapy, and they have offered this service at no charge to us this year.
Question on this, since we've just, said we're not having fall sports, since this was going to be free during the fall anyway, does that change this contract in any way?
That's a great question, Susan. My recommendation at this point, since there is no cost, would be that the board proceed with the appointment. I know that Mr. Henry and Mr. Kimball are working on several proposals that may engage student athletes. That would include off-season weight training or intramural play as we are able. And in that case, we might very well benefit from the services of an athletic trainer.
Makes sense. Move to approve.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And last under items for consideration, but not the least, is the bond resolution for the bus acquisition.
Yes, this is to approve the financing to acquire the buses that were approved by the voters in this spring. So it did not to exceed $509,000.
Any questions on this? Move to adopt. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Information items, the next Board of Education meetings will be held here in the Golden Middle School Library. The first one on September 28th at 7 p.m. Second one is October 19th at 7 p.m. Also in our packet, Carl provided us all with an updated calendar this year with the Board of Education date on it for our information. Are there any member items at this time?
I have just sitting here with you folks live with your masks on and being able to see the faces of the other staff who are presenting. As an audience member watching it, it's a lot easier to tell what the faces are saying than what you folks masked. I know there's different opinions as to whether we should be meeting in person to support the faculty and students who are meeting in person. For myself, I still feel like meeting in the way that is best for that particular meeting is the way. So I'm wondering if over the next couple of weeks, if we receive feedback from people who are watching and interested in what the board is doing, if there's feedback as to whether they prefer, or from our staff, whether they prefer us meeting in person like we are with masks on or meeting as we had been electronically.
I do know that the governor just authorized another month. So we are authorized to go back to virtual, I believe until the end of September. So, I mean, that's.
I can tell you that, to Susan's point, our rationale here is that we will do in person what we feel we must, and we've opened our schools with that in mind. I can tell you that our management teams, our administrative councils, our directors meetings, our grade level team meetings, all of those, to the degree that we are able, we are scheduling remotely, because we recognize that anytime we bring people together, we do run the risk of unnecessary exposure. So my advice to all of our team leaders and our committee chairs has been, if the meeting can be conducted effectively remotely, that is the pathway we should use. So I'll share that with the board in terms of internal operations. That's what we're doing.
Well, I guess that opens the floor for discussion. Do we want to do virtual, or what are your thoughts on the meeting? What do you want to think about it? We've got a couple of weeks. Why don't we think about it and then get back to me on what your thoughts are relative to Susan raises the ballot. Anybody else? Any other member? Hearing none, I move that the Board of Education enter into executive session as permitted under the New York Open Meetings Law for items pertaining to the appointment, discipline, or continued employment of an individual or individuals. Second. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
For our folks who are watching at home, we're going to stop the recording and live stream. If the board takes any action after executive session, we would go back to live streaming reports, but none is anticipated.
Hi everyone, I'm Richard and welcome to Sidewalks Entertainment. Coming up, we have music from singer, actress Haley Steinfeld. And Lori has interviews with 2 celebrity guests. Coming up later, she's going to talk to an actor who was in Aquaman, The Conjuring movies, and TV's A Gifted Man. The Scream King himself, Patrick Wilson, will be here. And in just a moment, he was in Smallville, Blue Mountain State, and DC Universe's Titans. The popular Alan Richson will be joining us too. It's a jam-packed show, so don't change the channel. Sidewalks Entertainment begins right now.
You might recognize him from his roles in films like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Hunger Games, Above the Shadows, and you've also seen him on TV in Smallville, Blue Mountain State, and Titans. I'd like to welcome to Sidewalks Entertainment, Alan Richson. Hi, Alan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. Hi.
Now, prior to speaking with you today, I watched an audition that you did in 2004 for American Idol.
Oh, no.
Yes! Yes!
I was a child then.
Oh my gosh. You sang You Are the Sunshine of My Life to none other than Paula Abdul.
I remember
now. Oh
now.
my gosh.
Now that you bring it up.
How could you forget? Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow. That was a long time ago. Yeah, American Idol. Yeah.
Now, what are your thoughts when you think back on your American Idol days?
Oh, what am I? For me, it was a time of a lot of transition. I was still trying to figure out like what I wanted to do with my life. I had a lot of friends telling me like, you got to go try out for the show American Idol, and it was my first time ever to LA. So.
Oh wow! Oh my gosh!
Yeah, the show doesn't really know how it changed my life, but it did. It wasn't. I just loved the energy of LA. I came out and I watched like, I looked around and I saw everybody like dying for this dream they had, like crying when they got cut, like, and I was like, man, I don't feel that way about this, but I do like
you
that.
You seemed really lighthearted about it.
I don't think a lot of this stuff is sacred. Like it's, I think life is about other things than like work and sing. There's a lot of like half the people we know can sing really well, better than some of the people we hear on the radio. Like you're not the only singer on earth. I mean, the world's gonna be okay if you're not blasting the next track on. So I don't know. I had never been around that. I'd never known what I wanted to do, but I just liked people and adventure and so here I was in LA. Realizing like I have to be back here because I like being around this. These people want something. It's not what I want, but so I came back and kind of accidentally got into film, and I was on a show. I started on Smallville a few weeks later, and the rest is history. So I kind of quit music, and I've never looked back. So yeah, that was so. When I think of American Idol, that's what I think of is finding what I do now.
Yeah, you were so good. And I mean, I wasn't even there, but I was just like, oh my gosh.
So you would have picked me?
I would totally have picked
sweet.
you.
Thank you.
If I was Paula Abdul.
Thank you.
Well, was it your appearance on American Idol that kind of jump-started your career in acting? I mean, is that how you were first discovered?
I would